Welcome to Teen DBT Group. We are so happy that you've chosen to learn to become a good emotional problem solver and gain the skills to move towards your life worth living. We start by talking about what makes somebody a good candidate for skills group. And so when somebody is experiencing big and overwhelming emotions that lead to behaviors that get in the way of a fulfilling life, this is typically someone who has emotion dysregulation or a poor ability to manage their own emotions. And so where this starts, I'll draw your attention to the middle of this circle where it says big and overwhelming emotions. Oftentimes, people who have big and overwhelming emotions feel like they're on fire with those emotions. They're all consuming, they're big, they're overwhelming. They get in the way of being able to organize your life towards your goals. And instead, your life becomes organized around managing these emotions. And so when we can think of it that way, we'll go to this top circle here where it says self-harm, suicidal thoughts, urges, and actions. When we think about emotions as big, overwhelming, like we're on fire with our emotions, it makes sense sometimes that your brain would think, I can't handle this. Let me find a way to make this feeling go away. We're not saying that we agree with or endorse this as a healthy coping strategy, but we're saying that we understand how this could show up for you. Similarly, it makes sense why someone with big and overwhelming emotions would turn to drugs or alcohol or binging or numbing out, or even the brain going to dissociation as a way to cut off or disconnect from these big feelings. Our individuals who have difficulty managing big and overwhelming emotions tend to engage in extreme black and white thinking. When your emotions escalate, the more escalated your emotions are, the lower your ability to solve problems. Thinking becomes very binary, black, white, good, bad, all, nothing. And so when you notice those thought patterns show up, it's typically when you're in a state of emotion overwhelm. And because individuals with big and overwhelming emotions tend to lean towards self-destructive behaviors and black and white extreme thinking, it often leads to these relationship problems, whether it's cutting off in a relationship, arguments, shutting down, provoking someone to get your frustration out. There's a lot of conflict that shows up in relationships when someone has trouble managing their emotions. And so when we look through all of these collection of behaviors, it also leads to people with these intense emotions having a fear of rejection or abandonment, a worry that other people don't like them, the belief that they are unlovable. And what's interesting is that sometimes there's a kernel of truth in this, because when you tend to lean towards self-destructive behaviors, when you have all or nothing thinking patterns that sometimes are, you always do this to me, you're never nice to me, leading to relationship problems, conflict, and arguments, sometimes it's hard for people to be around you. And so when you're reading the room, you're reading some of that accurately, and it's really painful. And so what's unhelpful about this is that that belief tends to then generalize to most or all of the people in your life and leads to this pervasive sense of loneliness that's hard to carry with you in life. And this leads to our last circle, which is poor self-esteem, emptiness, uncertainty in who you are, feelings of worthlessness because you feel disconnected from your loved ones, and you feel disconnected from your emotions because all of your behaviors are organized around getting rid of these emotions and not feeling these emotions. And so this is where DBT comes in, dialectical behavior therapy. So if you see in the four corners of this slide here, you'll see that the first one is individual therapy. And so when you're in individual therapy, you're working with your DBT therapist to get to the root of these behaviors, to understand the function, what's keeping the behavior in place, what are my patterns, how do I change my patterns so that I can change my experience of my emotions and I can change the quality of the relationships that I have because I'm managing my emotions better. And that leads us to skills group. So when you're in a skills group, you're going to learn all different skills for becoming more aware of your emotions, learning how to tolerate intense emotions without acting on self-destructive behaviors, improving your relationships, and then evening out your emotional state so there's not so many ups and downs. And with that, for teens especially, it's important that there's family, parent, and caregiver work that's happening at the same time. So it is unrealistic to expect a teen to be in a skills group without a parent or caregiver in the home also learning skills, so that we can change the home environment, right? Because teens don't grow up in a vacuum or in a test tube on their own. They grow up within a family system. And so we need to work together to learn skills within the whole family system so that we create change in the home environment. And the last and another important part of this is phone coaching. And so we have an on-demand skills coaching line. And what this means is that it's easy to use skills when you are in the office, when you're practicing in a group, when you're with your therapist. Where it's actually harder to do that is in your regular environment where your emotions are escalated, where you've just had the argument with your friend, where you're having the urge to self-harm and you have the tool or the instrument in your hand. These are the times that you would use phone coaching, and you would reach out to our phone coaching line and you would say, here's what's going on, here's what I've tried, and I need support so that I don't act on my urges and, engage in a behavior that is actually going to make things worse and move me away from my goals. And so this full program, the 4 corners, makes up our comprehensive DBT program. Those that are in individual therapy and skills group have access to our phone coaching line. Those that are in skills group only have an opportunity to learn skills and have an individual therapist outside our center that would take the lead on any other crisis or interim session management. So in a DBT skills group, there are 4 goals and therefore 4 skills training modules. The goal of a skills group is to help our teens learn to manage big emotions, improve relationships, and to connect with other teens to learn valuable skills to create a life they love. There's accountability and support in this process. The first module is mindfulness. And when you're not always aware of what you're feeling, why you get upset, what your goals are, mindfulness can be really helpful. It's also useful if you have trouble staying focused. Mindfulness skills improve your self-awareness and your awareness of the world. They teach you how to make wise decisions to keep you out of trouble so that you can focus on one thing at a time, avoid judging yourself and others, and to build self-esteem to do what works to meet your goals. Mindfulness is all about awareness, so that you have the space between what happens and how you react to what happens. Distress tolerance comes next, and this is when you act impulsively or escape your emotions by using self-destructive behaviors. Maybe this is cutting, maybe this is suicidal thoughts or binging or drugs and alcohol or running away. There are lots of ways that we can destructively act on our emotions. And the distress tolerance module includes 2 different subsets of skills. One is our crisis survival skills, and one is our accepting reality skills. Crisis survival skills are about coping with difficult situations without turning to harmful or unhealthy coping strategies. This part of DBT is probably what you're most familiar with. It's how do I take a walk? How do I journal? How do I listen to music to distract myself from these urges or intense emotions in the moment when it's a crisis point? And accepting reality skills are helping you accept what can't be changed so that you can focus on being effective in the moment. A lot of times we push up against reality. We wish that it wasn't this way. It should be another way. And we get stuck in thinking that keeps us stuck in how to solve the problem and be effective in that moment. So reality acceptance skills help us see what is and what to do with that. Emotion regulation is how we balance our emotions day to day. When you have fast, intense mood changes with little control over your feelings, or you're someone who feels like your emotions are controlling you, emotion regulation skills will help you balance your moods. The emotion regulation module teaches you to become more aware of your emotions, act in ways that reduce your vulnerability to emotions, that reduce the likelihood that your emotions will escalate to an intense crisis point, or that you'll act on those urges for self-destructive behaviors. It includes ways to build positive experiences and confidence building activities. So it's all about what can I do every day to be proactive in managing my emotions before they escalate. And then finally, interpersonal effectiveness skills are what help you build fulfilling and meaningful relationships. When you experience difficulty in keeping steady relationships, maybe you have trouble asserting yourself, maybe it's hard for you to ask for what you want or say no, or maybe you're someone who engages in a lot of conflict and arguments. These are skills to help you if you struggle with maintaining your self-respect, if you feel lonely. Interpersonal effectiveness skills teach you communication and relationship skills. They help you to be assertive, to build and keep healthy relationships, and to increase your self-respect and self-esteem. So now that you know about the 4 modules that cover the 24 weeks of a DBT skills group, let's talk about what to expect. DBT Skills Group is a 90-minute commitment for 24 weeks. The reason that it's 24 weeks is that is the span of time it takes to cover each of the skills within the 4 modules. Most teens stay for at least 2 rounds of skills to help them learn, strengthen, and reinforce the skills for success. The research supports that the first round, you're learning the skills and you're practicing them. And the second round, you're really embedding them into your life. You're strengthening and generalizing them. Our DBT group therapists have new activities for each cycle. So if you go through 2 cycles, you're not doing the exact same thing in each cycle. It will be the same skill, but it will be a different activity and way you're learning the skill. So within each group, here's the format. We start with a check-in and a few minutes of mindfulness. We review the previous week's homework. We'll always ask you to practice what's learned, which means that you're coming in and you're talking about how you used and practiced the skill, and we're holding you accountable by reviewing the homework. And we're also giving you feedback and coaching you if maybe it didn't work, or maybe there's a way that you could tweak it to make it more effective. So that's part of the skills coaching process. Then we teach and practice a new skill with fun activities and interactive games. We make it fun, we make it engaging. We want you to enjoy coming to group and really see the value in learning the skills together, which helps you to strengthen your overall use of the skills and gain more accountability. And then finally, we wrap up with a homework assignment and a recap of what was discussed in group. And the homework assignment really is your way to strengthen and generalize the use of the skill in your everyday environment. It's important to note that because group is skills-based, like a class and not therapy, that teens in DBT Skills Group are required to have an individual therapist who's responsible for treatment and safety planning. Remember, if you're in a DBT Skills Group at Creative Healing and you have an individual therapist at Creative Healing, you're eligible for our full program model, which includes the on-demand skills coaching. If you have an individual therapist outside of Creative Healing, you may not be getting DBT individual therapy, but you can still benefit from learning the skills in group. We do have some guidelines for our teen skills group, and these are agreements that make our group run well and make our group a safe and trustworthy place. So first and foremost, you will need the DBT skills training handouts and worksheets by Marsha Linehan. You can purchase it on Amazon. You'll get a link along with your orientation, and we can also provide a PDF of printable pages if that is your preference. So it's important to note that information obtained during group, including the names of group members, is to be kept confidential. And what this means is that not only can you not share what was talked about in group, but you actually can't even share who else is in the group. Let's say you have a friend at school who's friends with one of your group members. You can't say, oh, I saw Jamie, they're in my DBT skills group. So that would be breaking confidentiality. People are not to come to groups under the influence of drugs or alcohol. That gets in the way of learning and practicing the skills. And it's coming to group while also under the influence, which could be a target behavior for you or somebody else. And that could be really triggering. And so when I say target behavior, that's important for us to unpack a little bit. We actually don't talk about the details of drug use, alcohol use, self-harming behaviors during the course of group. Group members use the term target behavior to refer to a problem behavior that they're working on. And what this does is it protects the group as a whole from being triggered or tempting members into unhealthy new behaviors that maybe they haven't thought of, while also allowing you to get support in the way that you need. So an example of this would be saying, like, I acted on my target behavior this week and I need support with my distress tolerance skills. It keeps it general and it keeps it so that you can get support while protecting other group members. An important thing to note is that we have a 4-miss rule in group. If you miss more than 4 consecutive sessions, you are considered out of skills group. You have self-selected out of group. At that point, if you would like to rejoin the group, you'll need to have an individual session with a group leader to recommit to the process. And you may not be able to return until after the end of your 6-month original cycle. It depends on where you're at, what the discussion looks like with your group leader, and how willing you are to recommit fully to the process. Group members are encouraged to connect with each other, and we have no control over group chats or connections that happen outside of groups. So it's important that caregivers know that you know, we are not overseeing any connections that happen outside of the group room or outside of the Zoom screen. And sometimes it's helpful to be connected with other people that are going through something similar to you. But as a part of that, there's a couple caveats. And one is that group members may not contact another member in crisis. We are not each other's therapists. You must contact your individual therapist or use your phone coaching line in those occasions. People may not form cliques or date each other while in group. This is important because it impacts the group dynamics as a whole, and it makes things sticky and tricky within the group in the sense of like, now we're navigating these relationships and hurt feelings and tension that can arise from these situations. So contact outside of group is permitted as long as it promotes healthy behaviors and respects each member's boundaries. We have a zero tolerance policy for hate speech, racial slurs, derogatory language, no queer phobia. So we are very intentional about the safe and affirming space that we provide and ask that our members be aligned with that as well. I've already mentioned this, but you must be in individual therapy in order to remain in DBT. Homework should be completed before the start of group so that you're prepared and ready to share. And group starts and ends on time. If you're going to be late or absent, 24 hours notice is required in order to prevent being billed an administrative fee. So there is a full fee charge if you miss group without 24 hours notice. And so we really do ask that you use your skills to communicate with us when something comes up or a conflict arises. As I had shared, group is a weekly 90-minute commitment for 24 weeks, and most teens stay for at least 2 rounds. So you'll see here that there are 24 weeks and skills listed in your orientation handbook when you are enrolled in DBT Group. It is encouraged if your group intake or skills leader has not told you what week you're currently on, that you ask them, and that you also communicate this to your caregiver, to any other professionals that you're working with, or to your school counselor, so that they know where you are in the process and they can support you week to week. It's encouraged that you give these handouts to, again, your school counselor, a case manager, therapist, caregiver, so they know, okay, this week we're on mindfulness of emotions, week 19, and you're learning how to observe your emotions as they come and go. So now I know what you're working on, and I know what to look out for. I know how to support you, and I know how to reinforce you when you're using these skills. There are certain standard weeks when the center takes a break and we do not offer skills. It tends to follow the school calendar, and we do take the full week off on these weeks because all of our groups run on the same schedule. So even if, let's say, Monday is a Memorial Day, so there's no Monday group that week, there's no other groups that week, so that we can all stay on the same schedule. So the week of Labor Day, the week of Thanksgiving, 2 weeks for winter break, typically the last 2 weeks of the year, but you'll get advance notice on that. 1 week for spring break to be announced with advance notice, the week of Memorial Day, and the first 2 weeks of July. It's important in these breaks in DBT Group that you still have individual support. And it's also important to note that group leaders are not on call for services during planned breaks. One thing that's important is the difference between comprehensive DBT versus a DBT skills group only. So if you're in comprehensive DBT, it is a 24-week commitment. You'll have weekly individual sessions with a therapist. You'll be using a diary card to track your behaviors and patterns. You'll have access to our phone coaching line to generalize skills between sessions. You'll be attending a 90-minute skills group weekly. Your family and or caregiver will be included in sessions as appropriate and as designed in your treatment plan. And you have a consultation team to support you, which means that all of our DBT therapists gather once a week and support each other in being more skillful in delivering the treatment as it's designed, backed in the research, so that you get that gold standard support. If you're in DBT skills group only, it is a 90-minute weekly group for 24 weeks. And you do have to be in individual therapy, but you can retain your regular individual therapist outside of creative healing, and they would be the ones responsible for any treatment plans, safety concerns, or whatever treatment is being delivered as they've designed it and developed it with you. DBT Skills Group as a standalone treatment is a classroom-like setting for teens to learn skills. It is not a replacement for therapy, and all group members must have an individual therapist. And because of this, we have an outside provider agreement that if you are not seeing a therapist at Creative Healing, we ask that you give this page that's in your orientation packet to your outside provider. It outlines the limitations of the scope of group-only treatment, meaning that we are not responsible for any safety risk assessments. We're not responsible for crisis management. We don't hold an individual treatment plan for this client. And please reach out to us so that we can collaborate with you to ensure that we're working together as a team. And so we do ask that if you're seeing an individual therapist outside the center, that they get this information so that we can best work together. Finally, many caregivers and school counselors ask, how can we support our teen in DBT Skills Group? And so our team has developed some questions and some practices to use with them so that you can help to strengthen their skills use at home. The first one is to ask, what did you learn in DBT Skills Group this week? Or to check the curriculum and say, oh, I saw that you were learning the tip skill this week. Can you teach me this skill? What is that? You know, catching your teen at the right time to be able to let them teach you. And what we know is that teaching actually strengthens knowledge. And so this will help your teen strengthen their skills, knowledge, and skills use. To help your teen generalize skills to daily living, you can ask, how does this apply to your everyday life? You can ask them to give you an example of how they've used or practiced this skill, or you can give them an example. Let's say they teach you how to access your wise mind. You might say, wow, that's really interesting. I noticed that I was able to do this in this situation. Here's how I see this. Is this right? So you're engaging in conversations around using these skills. To help teens complete assignments for accountability, you might ask them what their assignment for skills group is this week. You might offer to sit with them or support them as they complete it. If you're a school counselor, maybe this is part of your weekly check-in that you're having them teach you the skills, you're reviewing or doing the homework with them, and you're helping them with understanding of it. And then finally, to help teens complete assignments for accountability, catch your teen using the skill and provide positive reinforcement in the moment. For example, I noticed that you took 3 slow breaths before you responded to me. It looks like you were practicing paced breathing from the tip skill. Way to go. And so what I want you to hear in this is that in order for you to catch your teen acting skillfully, you need to know and use DBT skills too. So it's important that you connect with your teen's skills group leader to ask about groups for caregivers and professionals so that you have all of the knowledge and information to best support your teen in this process. And finally, what's important about supporting your teen in DBT skills group is that we adhere to a consultation to the client model, which means that we do not talk about our clients without our client present. And instead, we coach our clients into how to discuss their own treatment, advocate for themselves. We empower them to share information as it's important to them, and we coach them through that process. And in this way, we're helping them build the muscle of becoming a good emotional problem solver, learning effective communication strategies. And so when caregivers and school counselors reach out to us and ask us about how our teen's doing in our skills group, what they're learning, how they're using it, these are the questions that we want you to use to talk to them about these things. And we can support that process if they're in individual therapy with us. But it's really important that the information being shared about skills group come directly from your teen, because they're the ones that need to learn it and use it in their everyday life. And that's why we're here. Okay, thanks for listening. We hope this information serves you in supporting you in Teen DBT Skills Group and supporting your support people and how to have this conversation with you.